Ladies and gentlemen, Sputnik has now landed. I understand that we now have a quorum, and as such we can actually commence our formal proceedings. I'll start by extending a formal and warm welcome to my friends and colleagues from the Department of Cooperatives, to those individuals from the League, to all the volunteers, all the members, all the staff, well-wishers and friends, a warm good afternoon to you all. And thank you for joining us today at our 45th Annual General Meeting. It has been interesting times, to say the least. And I know circumstances are quite difficult and to some extent quite strange. However, I must quote an old adage, and don't ask me who is in fact the author of same, but it is not the smartest of the species that will survive. It is not the strongest of the species that will survive, but it is he who is most adaptable to change. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to say that we are in fact adaptable to change, and we have to, must, and will change. With that said, I would want to commence our proceedings by suspending the standing orders, because there is in fact a point of note of some import that we must address before we continue. I think that the relevant amendments would in fact have been submitted to all, and I hope that everybody had a chance to peruse and to familiarize themselves with the contents of same. And therefore I'm going to treat same as having been read, understood and digested. But in summary, colleagues, what is being requested is that as a part of us being able to proceed here today, we must move a resolution, a motion, to adapt to the new circumstances that faces us. So in the past, we would in fact have had an AGM that would have been open to all our members. We would have had a stated quorum, and we could all interact and engage in the business of the organization. But the law-abiding citizens that we are in fact capped in terms of the numbers that we can have in any one space. Additionally, our existing rules does not facilitate a virtual meeting or forum or participation virtually. And therefore, there is in fact a need for persons who are here and persons who have joined us virtually. And again, it was remiss of me not to have extended a warm welcome to my friends who are joining virtually. Good afternoon to you all. That a resolution must be passed for us to have a hybrid meeting, which is in fact an incorporation of the persons who are here in this room as a part of the face-to-face quorum, and those persons who are joining us virtually. So before I proceed, I just want to first find out if there are any questions from anybody either here in this particular room or virtually in respect to the motion that we're about to put on the table and to have passed. I thank you very much. And that is part of the reason why we must have our regulators and other persons to ensure the relevant guidance is given. So with that said, I would like to move a motion to suspend the standing orders. Could I have somebody moving such a motion? Thank you very much, Ray. Could I have somebody else seconding that motion? Peter Samuel. And thank you for that. So with the suspension of the standing orders, we can now move into a discussion, if needed, on the amended proposal. So again, I'll put it to the persons here and virtually. Are there any point of clarity? Is there anything that anybody would in fact need addressed or clarified? Certainly those on the platform and in the audience will do our best to answer your questions. But again, in order for us to proceed today, we must have the permission of the membership to accept a hybrid meeting. So that is where we are at this particular juncture. But before we actually move that motion for the adoption of this particular kind of a meeting, it would be remiss of me not to get from persons a sense of whether or not everybody understands, everybody is clear, or everybody has any questions at all. And I will not assume that silence means consent. Is it crystal clear, or is it as clear as mud? Well, that's what I'm saying. I've not heard from my support team if there are any questions from the virtual audience. Well, could somebody just read the question if there is in fact such a question? For the benefit of those that are in the room. And certainly we'll do our best to address and answer same. How will your input be validated? That's a very interesting question. Okay. Essentially, it has been my understanding that the technical team has been reaching out to persons who have logged on for them to change their names. I mean, we are well aware that sometimes, depending on the device that you may log in from, it might give some kind of a pseudonym. So you might have something like Android 5.0 or something. So we have asked all persons who are joining the meeting virtually to pretty much log in with their names so we can cross-check and validate that against the database of members here at the credit union. Once it is that we have passed this motion, certainly whatever activities that are here, our virtual audience will be able to participate, including voting on any issue or resolution. And that is why it is particularly important that persons change their names so we can actually validate their identity and for us to be able to proceed. Are there any other questions? No other questions.
Would be invalid.
The comment?
The comment about how would our input be validated.
Well,
Exodus Insurance, as far as I understand, is a corporate body.
Well, I'm assuming when she meant us, she was pretty much speaking both in terms of the plural and singular. So I guess she's there tuning with her colleagues.
No. The message came from Exodus Insurance, correct? Right, so I'm saying...
As in an account there or a person there? Because I'm assuming, well, I actually thought that there would have been an address linked to that particular entity that... Right, so we just need for that person to identify themselves and conform to the protocols. And we'll be able to validate their identity, and as such, once they're proven to be a member, they will be able to participate and have all the rights that any other member in this room shall have. So you'll be in no way disenfranchised by being in the virtual space. If there are rather no other questions, I would in fact like somebody to move a motion to accept. I'm sorry. Okay, thank you very much for that. All right, so can we quickly validate Mr. Coke's status? He's well known. He needs no introductions. Okay. All right, so with that said, if we are to proceed, we are at a stage where a decision has to be made. And we are imploring our members here and those virtually to support the motion. But I'm sorry. Well, I'll turn that over to the technical team. It would be good. I think we have the information. Again, as I've indicated, the proposed amendments that have been circulated, both in terms of the website of the credit union and it would have been in the print media, Mark, if I'm not mistaken. So just to refresh persons to some of the key points as to what it is, I have actually paraphrased in the interest of time. But what we're basically doing essentially is to facilitate a hybrid meeting where we'll have persons in person and we'll have persons attending virtually. And the quorum would be a composite of both groups of individuals. So while the technical persons seek to project,
Also, will be passing virtual only, where persons can do it straight online. But I was just adding that person can also do it virtual only,
Yes.
where they'll be able to participate only online.
okay,
So 3 types of meeting you will be allowed to have: in person, virtual only, hybrid, which is a combination of both.
right. And that is particularly important given the nature and circumstances in which we must operate. So in light of that, colleagues, it is now on the screen, and we basically are requesting that someone move a motion. And again, apologies, this is always one of the problems with the technology. Goes off at the most inopportune moment. Yes, I'm sorry. As I was saying, colleagues, I need somebody to... Thank you very much. And that is Ray Johnson. And in terms of the seconding of the motion?
Peter Samuel.
Peter Samuels. Okay, so colleagues, the motion is now before you. And we pretty much will have to take a vote, both in terms of persons in this particular room. I'll ask my colleague regulator for some support in terms of being able to validate the ayes and the noes. So in the first instance,
So I'm going to be with the acceptance, adoption of the motion, adoption of the resolution for hybrid, virtual, and face-to-face. All in favor, please raise your hand so we can count you. Raise your hand. Fifty. 21. 21 are up here.
there's one more.
9, that's 30. 75 is the number that we need.
So, online,
So online will now we, and you have 2 staff members outside. Madam, did you vote? I didn't see your hand. Yes. Okay. The two staff members outside that participated. Have a come in, let me see it.
They come in and raise their hand.
They can come in and raise their hand.
You're here for the vote?
Do you count him, Marjorie? That gentleman that's
Jackie.
coming.
You voted?
So 1, 2, plus 2. He voted? And plus the 2, that's 3 then.
And before we're looking in terms of online.
Well, I can finish in here this part though. Any against? Alright then. So I have no against this time. Yes? So far, 33. In here, 23 for.
Okay. But honey, I mean, I think it's perfect. You know, I mean, you couldn't ask, you didn't get more, you didn't get less, but it's exactly on. It's spot on. So we're still just awaiting the final count. I'm hoping there'll be no need for a magisterial recount, but I leave it in the hands of my capable regulators.
All right, sir. Based on the numbers that we officially have, 33 persons, 4 internally, 42 online, gives you 75, 1 abstention, therefore the motion carried.
The motion has been carried. Okay. So with that said, colleagues, we are halfway there to actually starting the meeting, and we now need to move a motion to go back to our regular proceedings. May I have somebody moving said motion? Okay.
Barrington Lawrence.
All right. Okay. All right. I'm sorry. Did we have somebody seconding that motion?
Yeah, ready.
All right. I know that Barry moved the motion. I just don't know if any. Okay. All right. So the motion has been moved. So we are now returning to our regularly scheduled broadcast for the evening, ladies and gentlemen. I thank you for your kind patience. With that said, so colleagues, the very first thing on our agenda would be the minutes of our last AGM, and the minutes have been on the website, and I really am taking it as read. That person's had the opportunity to review and to critique same. But again, I will not assume. Are there any proposed amendments to the minutes? Is there anything that needs to be added, subtracted, multiplied, divided? I mean, you don't all have to come rushing and shouting at the same time. If there are no amendments to the minutes, I would like somebody to move a motion for the adoption of the minutes. That was you, Mashery. I thought for a moment there your hand was going up. I mean, you know, that's kind of what happened in track and field when you shuffle in the blocks. All right, so I said, is there anybody who will in fact move the motion for the adoption of the minutes? It would have to be somebody, I think, from who attended that meeting, certainly. The person who seconds doesn't necessarily have had to have been in attendance, but we need somebody who was at the last AGM to... undoubtedly. Peter Samuels. And it looked like Mashery is about to second. Thank you very much, Mashery, for your kind... It's when you have these double-barrel names, you kind of... that rolls off the tongue. You kind of want the owners to give it the swagger that it deserves. All right, so having accepted the minutes in terms of the matters arising and the potential questions, and certainly, colleagues, one of the things that we're going to do today is in terms of speed and efficiency. If anything COVID has taught us is how to be more creative in terms of time management and speed. So again, are there any matters arising from the minutes? I mean, anything that jumps out at anybody? I guess with that said, we can move to the next agenda item. And I'm being advised that that is the report of the Board of Directors. So the honor and privilege falls to myself to present the report of the Board of Directors. And essentially, colleagues, I'm really giving you some of the major highlights from the year that was. And again, I'll continue with my comments in relation to COVID. And that is in fact a word that is permanently etched in our memories forever. COVID-19 hit Jamaica like a ton of bricks on March the 10th, 2020. And while it is that we are a resilient people, we still are living with the consequences of COVID. Words such as social distancing, comorbidity, quarantine, lockdown, vaccines, fear, masks, have all become a staple of our vocabulary. We spent the better part of 2020 just trying to survive, just being safe. We didn't know much about the pandemic, and some persons will say ignorance is bliss. And I guess the more we learned about COVID, the more it is that we became more adept at being able to maneuver the COVID space. In terms of what was happening in the external environment at the time, we noted that our erstwhile Minister of Finance, Dr. Nigel Clark, had predicted an overall national growth of 2.2%. And his sentiments were echoed by external entities, the IMF in particular, who also endorsed robust growth in the Jamaican economy. And all of this led to improved economic perceptions and outlook, which engendered greater levels of confidence in the economy. The prevailing government policy at the time was pretty much geared towards stimulating economic growth through continuous reductions in interest rate. And I think we all marveled at the constant decline in the interest rates, and we were wondering just how low they could go, almost like a limbo dancer. And I'm noticing that my presentation is still not on the screen, but I will not detain you while the technical person sorted that out. And therefore what we saw was that in respect of the Treasury bill, the T-bill rates, I mean, one is still getting used to wearing a mask. One will never get used to wearing a mask. In terms of the T-bill rates, we noticed that the 90-day T-bill rate would have had an average yield of about 1.32% in 2019, and this would have fallen to 1.25% year over year. And that was, in fact, the hallmark of the direction in which the rates were going. As the pandemic took hold, however, we noticed that virtually all sectors of the economy were affected. And by no means IECCU was also affected. And we noted that our loans to asset fell from 74% in February to 72%. And by June, it was down to 70%. So we too were not immune to the ravages of COVID. In this regard, loanable funds now had to be channeled to investment opportunities that were offering very low rates of returns. Notwithstanding this, the resilience of the credit union and the hard work of its committed and dedicated staff members, we were able to return a modest surplus of a little over 1.2 million in 2020. I think that is in fact an indication of just how resilient we are in the face of adversity. In respect to the composition of the board comprised myself as president, Rejean Campbell, vice president, Mashery Hamilton Clark, secretary, Lisa Robinson, and if my colleagues who are here could just raise their hand to be noticed by the quorum. Peter Townsend, Cherie Davis Cuthbert, Cosmo Walker, Barrington Lawrence, and Paulette Small. We had a possible 13 meetings, and we were only able to convene 10 meetings. And the attendance data, I think, is on the screen for the review of the membership. In terms of major operational highlights in 2020, we noticed a modest growth in membership by 147 new members. Conversely, we noticed that in respect of internet banking, it fell by 148. And I mean, this is one of those strange phenomenon that, you know, you probably might lose sleep over, but it is, you know, we actually saw a modest decline in the persons utilizing our internet banking services. In terms of our family indemnity plan, we noticed a whopping increase year over year from 42 to as much as 601. And in terms of our goal accounts, we saw a modest decline of 12. And as far as debit cards, again, we saw a modest increase of 10. We were forced as a result of the pandemic to do a couple of things differently. So we had to adjust our operational hours. We also had to implement a work from home policy, and that was pretty much subject to the nature of the job that the incumbent had to execute. We pretty much increased sanitization. We implemented other things such as temperature checks and physical distancing, and we observed all the necessary hygiene guidelines. We also sent advisories to our members indicating the alternative channels to reduce in-person traffic into the credit union. And these would have included things like salary deductions, post-dated checks, telebanking, just to name a couple. We recognize in particular that our members would have been particularly exposed to financial challenges arising from COVID. And as such, we offered easy access to moratorium on loan principal payments. We waived late payments and early encashment fees, and we also allowed for immediate access to unsecured funds. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that the credit union is in fact a part of a bigger family, and we must support family. And these were some of the initiatives that as a family we took to ensure the longevity and security of the family. In terms of our marketing activities, they too would have been impacted by COVID. Notwithstanding that, we still utilize our SPICE newsletter to promote some of the products that we had, in particular our water tank loan and our Golden Harvest Savings Plan. We also continued our corporate social responsibilities. We provided assistance and support to the Richmond Park Nazarene Basic Schools, and that has been a long-standing project. I mean, in this particular initiative, we sought to renovate the sanitary conveniences there. We continued with our PEP Scholarship Awards, and Tajane Jones and Giovanni McLaughlin would have been the recipients of same. And in respect to the Jamaica Cooperative Credit Union League bursary, this went to Shanae Davis. In terms of our performance in respect of other areas, such as the different savings accounts, we had mixed results year over year, and we saw a slight decline in our youth accounts. In terms of the golden harvest, we also saw a little decline there as well. And I guess the biggest hit would have been in terms of our fixed deposits, and those pretty much would have gone down from 538 million in 2019 to 247 million in 2020. In terms of the performance of our Montego Bay office, again, it would have been mixed. We saw where deposits actually saw a modest increase, transfers also increased, withdrawals increased. However, the number of loans granted would have had a significant hit. And that would have also continued with other areas in respect to the operations of that particular location. In seeking to improve our service level, information technology would have been the backbone of our strategy. And as a part of that, the credit union commenced a project to upgrade the Access Plus debit cards in partnership with MasterCard. And that would have brought with it pin and chip technology, and that is now becoming an industry standard, in addition to transaction alerts. And above all else, moving to MasterCard would have given persons a wider usage, including at the international level. We still are experiencing challenges in respect to delivering statements by email, and that is something that we're committing to addressing. We also are asking, or had asked members to utilize internet banking for continuous access to balances and transaction information to, again, reduce the number of persons within the banking hall and the banking space. Delinquency continues to be an area of concern. In fact, one might actually name it as perhaps the area of greatest concern. And we had to implement a number of strategies to curb delinquency rates, and this include interest-only payments. We had to temporarily suspend payments, and in terms of loans of about 75 million were kept current as a result of the strategies that we would in fact have implemented. We continue to get support from the League and our regulators, and again, we must commend them and thank them for the kind support. The League would have continued to expand its role in facilitating cash flow support and in terms of other strategies to prevent impairment during the pandemic. We must note that no credit union was severely affected, though there were reductions in loan portfolios across the board. The theme, "Together we do more," is the mantra of the Credit Union League, and as such, we continue to pursue merger discussions in preparation for the Bank of Jamaica oversight, and to ensure we are more efficient in respect to service delivery. At this particular point, I would like to express my sincere condolences. I mean, this is always a very difficult part at the AGM, but we must in fact recognize and salute the contribution of members who are no longer with us. And as such, we must express our sincere condolences to the families and the loved ones of some of the persons who would have passed on in 2020. And the names would have included Raquel Aldridge, Lurleen Bannister, Guy Chen Su, Warren Henriquez, Rohan Scarlett, LaLorna Turner, and Lloydell Wint. And if I have accidentally omitted any particular name, we offer our sincere apologies for saying, but those were the names that came to our attention at the time of publication. I must say that the contribution of these members will be greatly missed. We also take the time to remember those individuals who would have lost loved ones to crime and other tragedies. Again, we offer our condolences to their families and loved ones. We want to, as a board, acknowledge with gratitude the hard work of the Supervisor Committee, the Credit Committee, the Delinquency Committee, our external partners. We would also like to take the opportunity to salute and recognize the contribution of all of the team members, the staff, and all other volunteers. I therefore would like to, on behalf of my fellow colleagues at the level of the board and all the volunteers, thank all the members for their continued support, patience, and understanding. Let our credit union, the Insurance Employee Credit Union, a union of possibilities, help you on your way to your financial dreams and well-being. In concluding, colleagues, the year 2020 was by far the most challenging and unusual. Nevertheless, it must be seen as one that provided the impetus to do things differently, to look at the fundamentals of our business and our members and reach out in similar unusual ways. New ways of communicating, new ways of doing business would in fact have been the mantra of the credit union. We found new ways of hosting meetings, moving money, supporting employees in ensuring quality service delivery. And we will continue in the pandemic and after we have exited the pandemic to serve you, our members, our loyal customers, colleagues, and friends to the best of our abilities. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Present.
Thank you very much. But not as brilliant as I thought. Again, I can never stress the importance of regulators. They keep you on the straight and narrow. And that is one of the things I must assure you, colleagues, that in terms of the support we have gotten from the leagues and in terms of our own internal mechanism, we are ensuring that the business of the credit union is secured and in safe hands. With that said, colleagues, I must move a motion for the adoption of the report of the Board of Directors. May I ask somebody to move such a motion? Thank you very much. Could you give us your name, sir?
Yes, sir.
No,
Yes.
he moved on a second.
Another fabulous double barrel name. All right, so with that said, I thank you, colleagues. The motion would in fact have been adopted, and we would now want to continue with our agenda. At this particular juncture, we'd like to invite our auditor, Mr. Bogle, to come and give his report. Mr. Bogle.
Good afternoon, members. It is good to see some familiar faces, and I trust that everybody's been staying safe during these times. I am here to bring you guys the Independent Auditor's Report for Insurance Employees Cooperative Credit Union. So let me first formally Say hello to the President, the Board of Directors, the Registrar, and the members. We have audited the financial statements of Insurance Employees Cooperative Credit Union set out on pages of our report 6 to 34, which comprise the statements of financial position as at December 31, 2020, the statements of profit or loss and other comprehensive income, changes in equity and cash flows for the year then ended, and notes comprising significant accounting policies and other explanatory information. In our opinion, the accompanying financial statements give a true and fair view of the financial position of the credit union as at December 31 and of the financial performance and cash flows for the year then ended in accordance with International Financial Reporting Standards, IFRS, and the Cooperative Societies Act. We conducted our audit in accordance with international standards on auditing. Our responsibilities under those standards are further described in the auditor's responsibilities for the audit of the financial statement section of our report. We are independent of the credit union in accordance with the International Ethics Standards Board for Accountants, Code of Ethics Professional Accountants. And we have fulfilled our other ethical responsibilities in accordance with the said code. We believe that the audit evidence we have obtained is sufficient and appropriate to provide a basis for our opinion. Key audit matters are those matters that in our professional judgment were of most significance in our audit of the financial statements of the current period. These matters were addressed in the context of our audit and the financial statements as a whole, and informing our opinion thereon, and we do not provide a separate opinion on these matters. During the current year, there was one area of which we consider to be a key audit matter: the impact of the coronavirus. The credit union has assessed the impact of the recent coronavirus and its ability to continue as a going concern. In this evaluation, the credit union has assessed its industry, including its customer base, and determining the potential future impacts. Our responsibility was to assess these factors and determine if management's conclusion as to its ability to continue as a going concern is reasonable. Management has concluded that based on the industry which it currently is, there will not be significant negative impact on its ability to continue as a going concern. We have assessed the factors and based on the type of industry found no significant exceptions to their conclusion. Management is responsible for the other information. The other information comprises the information included in the annual report, but does not include financial statements and our audit report thereon. The annual report is expected to be made available to us after the date of this auditor's report. Our opinion on the financial statements does not cover the other information, and we will not express any form of assurance or conclusion thereon. In connection with our audit of the financial statements, our responsibility is to read the other information identified above when it becomes available, and in doing so, consider whether the other information is materially inconsistent with the financial statements or with our knowledge obtained in the audit, or otherwise appears to be materially misstated. When we read the annual report, if we conclude that there is a material misstatement therein, we are required to communicate the matter to the Board of Directors. Management is responsible for the preparation of financial statements that give a true and fair view in accordance with IFRS and the Cooperative Societies Act, and for such internal control as management determines is necessary to enable the preparation of financial statements that are free from material misstatement, whether due to fraud or error. In preparing the financial statements, management is responsible for assessing the credit union's ability to continue as a going concern, disclosing as applicable matters related to going concern, and using the going concern basis of accounting unless management either intends to liquidate the credit union or to cease operation or has no realistic alternative but to do so. The Board of Directors is responsible for overseeing the credit union's financial reporting process. Our objectives are to obtain reasonable assurance about whether the financial statements as a whole are free from material misstatements, whether due to fraud or error, and to issue an auditor's report that includes our opinion. Reasonable assurance is a high level of assurance, but it is not a guarantee that an audit conducted in accordance with ISAs will always detect a material misstatement when it exists. Misstatements can arise from fraud or error and are considered material if individually or in the aggregate they could reasonably be expected to influence the economic decisions of users taken on the basis of these financial statements. A further description of our responsibilities for the audit of the financial statement is included in the appendix of this report. We have obtained all the information and explanations which, to the best of our knowledge and belief, were necessary for the purpose of our audit. In our opinion, proper accounting records have been maintained so far as from our examination of those records and the financial statements, which are in agreement therewith, give the information required by the Cooperative Societies Act in the manner required. The engagement partner on this on the audit resulting in this independent auditor's report is Warwick Bogle. The report is dated September 15th, 2021. Now for the appendix. As part of an audit in accordance with ISAs, we exercise professional judgment and maintain professional skepticism throughout the audit. We also identify and assess the risks of material misstatements of the financial statements, whether due to fraud or error, design and perform audit procedures responsive to those errors, and obtain audit evidence that is sufficient and appropriate to provide a basis for our opinion. The risk of not detecting a material misstatement resulting from fraud is higher than one resulting from error, as fraud may involve collusion, forgery, intentional omissions, misrepresentations, or override of internal control. We obtain an understanding of internal control relevant to the audit in order to design audit procedures that are appropriate in the circumstances, but not for the purpose of expressing an opinion on the effectiveness of the credit union's internal control. We evaluate the appropriateness of accounting policies used and reasonableness of accounting estimates and related disclosures made by management. We conclude on the appropriateness of management's use of the going concern basis of accounting and, based on the audit evidence obtained, whether a material uncertainty exists related to events or conditions that may cast significant doubt on the credit union's ability to continue as a going concern. If we conclude that a material uncertainty exists, we are required to draw the attention in our auditor's report to the related disclosures in the financial statements, or if such disclosures are inadequate, to modify our opinion. Our conclusions are based on the audit evidence obtained up to the date of our auditor's report. However, future events or conditions may cause the credit union to cease to continue as a going concern. We evaluate the overall presentation, structure, and content of the financial statements, including the disclosures, and whether the financial statements represent the underlying transactions and events in a manner that presents a true and fair view. We communicate with the Board of Directors regarding, among other things, the planned scope and timing of the audit and significant audit findings, including any significant deficiencies in internal control that we identified during the audit. We also provide the Board of Directors with a statement that we have complied with the relevant ethical requirements regarding independence and communicate with them all relationships and other matters that may reasonably be thought to bear on our independence, and where applicable, related safeguards. From the matters communicated with the Board of Directors, we determined those matters that were of most significance in the audit of the financial statements of the current period and are therefore the key audit matters. We describe these matters in our auditor's report unless law or regulation precludes public disclosure about the matters, or when in extreme rare circumstances we determine that the matter should not be communicated in our report because the adverse consequences of doing so would reasonably be expected to outweigh the public interest benefits of such communication. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bogle, for the comprehensive report. At this time, I'd like to ask members, are there any questions for the auditors? I know the report was very comprehensive, but I don't know if there is any point at all that members might want to seek clarity on any particular point. Just remind me for our friends online if there's anybody there with any comments or questions in relation to Mr. Bogle's report. If there are no questions or comments, I'd like to, at this juncture, invite our treasurer, Ms. Lisa Robinson, to give us the treasurer's report.
Good afternoon, fellow cooperators. All right, it is my pleasure to address you today in relation to the report. I know one should have been posted, so I'm just going to be giving you a kind of summary of what is in that report. Our president also went through quite a bit and would have highlighted some of the points that are also in my report, so I'll just mention them briefly, as we don't want to belabor the point. So, as he mentioned, the 2020 year was very challenging. I mean, against the background of a pandemic, I don't think we could have, anticipated all that we would have to do to just ensure that we would continue as a going concern. I think we, as a credit union, have done remarkably well, given the number of things we have to, as the word says, we have to pivot and change and just do so many things that would make our members much more comfortable, our team members also very comfortable in their operating environment. So it was a very challenging year. And as a result of all of the conditions that our president would have highlighted in terms of interest rates reduction, etc., we would have seen, as he said, a modest surplus, realized a modest surplus for 2020. It did fall significantly over 2019 by 83%, but nevertheless, we did realize a surplus, I think, against other institutions that may have seen quite much larger reductions, even into the negatives. So we have to commend the credit union for having stayed the course and actually, seeing a positive out of this. The assets grew by 6.5%, that's 123 million, to close 2020 at 2 billion. And this is against the background of an inflation rate of 5.19. So we did better than what the inflation rate was experienced by the country. So that is commendable. Our finance costs associated with deposit products were also reduced in line with the market rate. So that was started from 2019, continued throughout 2020. So you would have anticipated that we would see a continuous reduction in all of the costs and also our interest income. We would see that we would have a reduction in all of that. So, we're looking at, ensuring that we consider all of our risks in everything that we do, but also try to be a little bit more aggressive too in making sure that the credit union, see gains over this year. But as you can imagine, it has been a bit difficult. All right. Our loans also, we saw some reduction in our loan rates in line with markets, because we have to try to remain as competitive as possible. But I'm telling you, the loan market is fierce. There's a lot happening. A lot of organizations are doing so many things, and it has been really, really difficult. But we've tried to, keep our heads above the waters. Our loans after provisions declined by 3.16%, and overall, our interest on loans declined by 7%. And what we saw, though, is that there was an increase in our payroll short-term loans. That was by 14%. So all other loan types would have decreased except that. And that kind of just shows you what the appetite of the market was at the time. With all that is happening, we are a product of what is happening in the economy and with our members. So you feel it, we feel it. Whatever it is that you switch to, then we will see that. So you would have seen that, because persons are not going into, some persons wouldn't go long term. They want something to stop a gap because jobs were affected. So there's a lot of, a lot that was happening with our members that just would show in our financials, and we can see that. So we would see the changes. Our return on property, however, improved by 5% over the prior year, and our commissions and fees income increased by 26%. But our service charges would have decreased by 18%, and our president alluded to that. We did do a reduction in a lot of our service charges to ease, the difficulties that our members were facing. So, as I said, whatever it is that you were facing, and we tried to accommodate for that, you see it in our financials. That is not surprising. All right. So our member savings, I'm going a little quickly because some of it is just verbiage. Our member savings increased by 14%, or 103 million, as at December 31. And our deposits also increased by 14 million, or about 2%. Modest increases, we would have loved to have seen more, because that also would inform how much we can lend, because this is the pool from which we will lend to our members. And if it is that doesn't increase by any significant amount, then it is going to cause us to contract in terms of our ability to lend. But we still did, pretty well in that regard. And I just want to kind of plug in at this time. We are the members. We are only as strong as our weakest link. So we are encouraging persons, each one reach one, bring other persons in. The more you bring persons in, then we can build and we can have more, savings, deposits. We can lend more, which means greater income, greater surplus over the years. So we're just encouraging persons to just bring in more, bring someone else on board. There are so many persons that we can bring to the table at this time. So we had a pie chart which just kind of showed the source of funds that we lend. And by and large, as we said, our deposits and our shares accounted for like 74% of our total pool of funds. All right. The institutional capital and permanent shares to assets was at 14.5%, which is above our standard 8%. And in the complete report, you will see all of the Pearl ratios. We did pretty well with the Pearl ratios. As you know, that's not the end all and be all, but the credit union, being prudent, they have managed to keep their heads up, trying to keep everything in and all the pearl ratios satisfied to ensure that, we don't overextend ourselves. Our president mentioned that our loan to asset fell significantly from 76% to 69%. And as I said, that is by and large based on what we can do, but it was still within our pearl ratios, which is between 60 and 80%. Our delinquency was 3.8% as at December 31. And while that was an increase over last period, it is way below our standard of 5%. And we must commend the team, because in a time when persons were losing their jobs and having difficulty, a lot of this was staved off by allowing persons to get moratorium. So a lot of those strategies would have helped to maintain or keep the delinquency ratio down, because had we not done that, I'm sure it would have been way above 5%, because that is what we were seeing in the market. And so persons would have enjoyed renegotiated rates, payment plans, etc., because that's what we're here for. As our president said, we are a family, and we are here for each other. We are here to ensure that we succeed, because we, as the credit union, cannot succeed if our members don't succeed. So that is what we are here to do. And so you would have seen how we would have used our funds, another pie chart which shows you how much of our funds we used in loan, a great big 69% versus other investments of 16%, because our loans are our greatest income earner. The interest that we can get on investments at T-bills, etc., is nothing compared to what we can get on loans. So that's why I say the more money we can take in, the more we can off-lend, the better it is for the credit union. So, just imploring us to just work together to get that done. And here we have our pearl ratios, which, as you can see, we've been trying to maintain within our all acceptable standards. They have been pretty good. And those details, as I said, you can get on the report on the website. Right? Won't belabor going through each of them. And there are quite a few slides with those. And that's really what it is today, to conclude that, we have a vested interest in ensuring that our credit union continues to be a going concern. You're here today, those persons are online, are here to hear about the health of the credit union. But you who are here, who are interested, you need to bring others on. Tell them about the credit union. Bring them into the fold, what we can do for them. I know the marketing team has been working really hard to come up with all kinds of products and services that would benefit you, but you need to help us, because we can only do so much. And your voice out there, you selling the credit union for us, is going to make a big difference. So we just want to encourage persons, save more, help to build wealth for yourself, for the credit union, for all of us together. Because the greater the pool of funds, the greater benefit we can get by, in terms of the amount that in terms of returns. So we really encourage persons to do that. So at this time, we just want to encourage, to say thanks to our auditors, Bogle & Company, the Registrar of Cooperative Societies, the Jamaica Cooperative Credit Union League, for, as always, their professional assistance, their guidance in everything. They're looking out for us, and we are there to, we always ask for their opinions and their support, and they're always there to give that to us. And we just want to thank our management team, our team members and volunteers who continue to serve this institution. And as always, we are committed to serving you. That's what we do. And we just want to, anything you have to, in terms of comments or questions or suggestions, feel free to speak with us, to send in your, any of your concerns, because that's what we're here for, to share, to take your comments, because we don't have all the ideas. So anything that you can suggest, we are welcoming of all of your comments, right? And at this time, I think that is it for the Treasurer's report. So we just want to move. Are there any questions that anybody has? Anything online? And if persons online have questions that they want later, they can always still post it. I'm sure we will get the questions, and between myself and Mr. Bowen, we can certainly respond. There are mics around if anybody has any questions.
I do not have a question. I just want us to acknowledge Carol Nathan. Her hand has been up. I don't know if it's a technical glitch, but I just need to know.
Okay.
Because we lowered it earlier and it went up.
Okay. All right. All right. If there are no questions, no other comments at this time, we just want to make a motion to adopt the report, the Treasurer's report. Along with the auditor's report.
Bowen, you're first.
Mark Wallen. The Mark Savvy.
All right. Thank you so much.
Oh, that's for the record.
I thank you.
There's something down there.
What you want, the microphone? Yes. I just want to remind persons that if there are any questions or burning comments, please use the mic so that our friends and colleagues online will be able to hear us. Otherwise, they won't. While it is that the technical glitches are being sorted out, it was remiss of me not to have made mention of the following special guests at the onset of my presentation. I'd like to publicly recognize Mr. Richard Dunn from the Department of Co-operative, Marjorie Campbell from the same entity, Bethune Logbanton of QNet, Catherine D'Aguilar of the League, and again, our erstwhile auditor, Mr. Bogle. I would also like to offer apologies for the following individuals: Joyce Archibald, a stalwart, a long-standing member, Paulette Small and Rejean Campbell, both members of the board. At this juncture, I would like to invite the Supervisory Committee through their chair to deliver their report. Okay.
Good afternoon, colleagues. Mr. President, Mr. General Manager, members of the board, members of volunteers, regulators, members from the league, members of the credit union, staff, those in person and those online. Welcome and good afternoon. Okay. The Supervisor Committee comprised of 5 of us. Yours truly, Peter Samuels, was chairman. Dwight Moore, secretary. Napier McCleary, if you're here, just hold your hand up. So, yes. Gabriel Spence and Damian White. We convened 8 times because of COVID, online platforms, but that didn't sum up all the meetings. We had various other meetings on other platforms that were not recorded. You'll see on the next slide the attendance for the meetings. And so we reviewed a number of areas. Can move on. Next slide. We reviewed a number of areas, did thorough investigations in information and communication technologies, work from home policy, we look at the financial management, delinquency in particular, membership growth, marketing and membership itself, and HR. At this point, we want to commend the management for the overall running of the credit union. You know, it was well run. I think we should clap them here. Because of how COVID was and the impact that it had on the economy on a whole, we actually did quite well. But there were a few areas that we need to mention. For ICT, we're pleased with how far-reaching the securities policy that was drafted and passed was. It was very comprehensive, but there are a few matters of concern. There was an issue with segregation of duties that we were sure that will be dealt with. We had a question about insurance for the hardware and software, and also insurance to indemnify the credit union in case of financial loss suffered by members. That would happen via cyber breaches. You know, cybercrime is now prevalent, especially at this time where everything is now online. We have seen where other credit unions have been implicated or have been breached with their debit card system. So we want to ensure that we put something in place to protect us against that. The work from home policy, we reviewed that and we were quite pleased with the contents and what was outlined in the policy. We did thorough checks. However, we are recommending that the credit union does periodic checks on the equipment that staff has at home to ensure that they are kept in proper working order. And if possible, we could add some increased security system to prevent cybercrime on those. For financial management, the credit union has been performing well with most of its pearl ratios. As you heard in the Treasurer's report, we were well within the pearl ratios for most, if not all, of our areas. However, we still had a problem regarding signs of growth indicators. That ratio has been below the pearl ratio standard for a little while, and we want to do whatever is necessary to fix that. And with new marketing personnel, we figure we should be moving forward where that is concerned. The efforts to grow the membership, to grow the membership has been noted, notwithstanding the poor growth rate. And as I said before, the adding of this new marketing officer goes well for the credit union, as immediately it can be seen efforts are being made to improve this area. Additionally, we saw where there was increased maximum limit for the unsecured loan, which was done to help draw in new members and increase our loan portfolio. The new motor vehicle loan was created with a reduced interest rate and 100% financing with up to 10 years to pay. Those new initiatives will argue well for the credit union. HR management. The major concern we had was the segregation of duties for the ICT department. but we are assured that things are being put in place next year to make sure that this doesn't continue. And we are pleased with the gap that was closed with the employing of the new marketing officer. At this point, we wish to express appreciation to the members of the credit union for the confidence placed in us to serve the membership. We are also want to say thanks to the board of directors, other volunteers, the management and staff of the credit union for the support and cooperation given to us during our tenure. Let me also say thank you to the members of the Supervisor Committee for their time and commitment to serve the committee, staff, volunteers, and the credit union membership. Thank you. That was the report from the Supervisor Committee. Do you have any questions in the House or online? Do I need to move a motion as well? If no questions are forthcoming, I hereby ask for somebody to move the motion to adopt this report. All in favor, say. All right, Ray Johnson. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All in dissent? Thank you. It has been. Say nothing, yeah.
Had the report from the Supervisory Committee. I would like to now invite my colleague from the Credit Committee. I'm sorry, before we move, you have some questions of the Supervisory Committee?
For the previous report, which I believe was the Treasurer's report.
Okay, well, you can read the reports, and I guess we will respond accordingly. Okay. Okay, not a problem.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, this is the question now. I'm Carl Nathan. Are you recognizing me?
Yes.
Yes, Carl, we're hearing and recognizing you.
Okay, this is the question and concern I have. The Treasurer's report has made reference to the PERS ratio. The PERS ratio that I hear her mention in the Treasurer's report is 3.8% for the year ending 2020.
That is.
But on the PERS report that is in the Treasurer's report document, it is 2.9%. There seems to be an error there that needs to be corrected. In addition to that, I have a concern about the cost of funds in relation to average member savings. The ratio saying it should be between greater than 8%, and they're already having a 0.4%, not even 0.5%. And so I have a challenge with that. In addition, I have a challenge with net income to average assets, which should be greater than 2.3%, and it is 0%. In addition to that, I have a challenge with the liquid asset investment in relation to member savings. It is should be between the ratio of 20 to 30%, and it is 30 to 5%. I think there's a slight management challenge there with regards to liquid asset investment, which you need to look at. I heard the Supervisor Committee make mention of the challenge with membership, and I'm aware, and I think that's really a great concern. Before we get our notes, because that has been a challenge for a while. But my greater challenge is the other returns and costs, and also the liquid, and the challenge of the Treasurer's report, which her report has 3.8% for delinquency, and the file document for the annual report is 2.9%. There needs to be some correction or some adjustment. Can I have a little feedback on that? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question. Yes, there is the delinquency ratio was recalculated. It should be 3.8%, not 2.9. So it was corrected on subsequent reports, but you may have downloaded the previous report which had the incorrect figure. With respect to income, I think you said income to assets. Well, that's a reflection of earnings over the year, which was affected quite directly by the loans to assets. So these ratios are connected. The loan to asset ratio fell particularly because of COVID. Members just weren't borrowing. That affected income to assets, and that also affected liquidity. So most of the money that was available to lend had to be put on short-term investments, which earn very little. So all of those are connected. With respect to membership, I think that was spoken to by the supervisory chair, that is something that we are working on. We're working quite actively on at this time. So those ratios are interconnected. We encourage members to borrow from your credit union because that will certainly help several of these ratios to improve. So that is what I can say in response to that question. Any other questions? Yes.
When you talk about the net income to average assets, I'm looking at as far back as 2016.
Yes.
That has been a problem in credit unions, so that's not COVID related at all. So I'm asking, what strategy are we putting in place to have an improvement in that? Or what strategy might have put in place? Because when we look at, for example, 2016, it was 0.61%, 2017, 0.1%, 2018, 0.4%, and 2019, 0.32%, and 2020, when COVID, it came right on top of from 0%. And we are supposed to average it greater than 2.3%. So we're having a significant challenge as far as that is concerned. It seems to me that the credit union should be strategizing to the extent where there's significant improvement in that, which is a reflection of other ratios and other challenges that the credit union is having. So my question to you, therefore, not trajectory and what has been happening in credit union, just a matter of time before we're going to begin for a going concern people. What are the strategies that management, alongside with the officers, a system is going to put in place to ensure we're fixing these issues that are undercurrent within the credit union financial statement?
Thank you very much for that question. Very good question, actually. So the question really is, what will the credit union be doing to earn more money? Now, there are two main sources of earnings that the credit union employs. One is interest income on loans. The second one is fee income. That is income that we earn on fees and services that we provide. We are in a very, very competitive space at this point in time. We hear all the time about specials being offered here and there, which actually result in reductions in rates that are charged. At the same time, we hope that we will make some money on the volume of loans that are lent. So what we have to do is to ensure that our offerings are competitive, and that's one of the things that we're doing. You'd have heard, you'd have read about some offerings that have come out even recently. With respect to unsecured loans, we're increasing the amount of money that we're lending. We are also recognizing that these are risky loans. So it's not as if you can lend freely and that is all, and that will cure all ills. We have to recognize, and we've been through it before, where we've lent and we've had challenges and we've had massive write-offs. So we have to be very, very careful with our underwriting. We have to ensure that whatever we lend comes back to us not only in terms of repayments, but comes back to us in terms of our earnings. It's a very competitive market. We hear the political discussion about fees, rapacious fees that are being charged by financial institutions, and whilst we are cognizant that we need to charge fees, we're also mindful that the more fees we charge, the higher the fees are, is more challenging and difficult it is for some persons to pay. So it's not an easy balance to achieve, but it's something that we know that we must achieve, and you can be assured that with the latest round of offerings, it's a reflection of our desire to ensure that we increase our income going forward. Any other questions? Yes. So Delahaye? Yes. Delahaye? I can hear you now. I can hear you now. Yes. Oh dear. I don't think I understand the question. Say the question again. Well, I think that's what the auditor indicated. We have made clear the credit union is a going concern. Shall I answer the question? Well, let me answer the question. There is no plan in place at this point in time to merge with another credit union. And when I say plan, I mean a plan. There are discussions that we have had and that we hope to resume or to continue, which have not started yet, with respect to credit union, with respect to choice credit unions who we believe we share some kind of synergy with. How that will happen, we don't yet know. We had the last set of discussions we had with credit unions were of the sort that made clear that they, like us, want to ensure that we retain our identity. And so all of us are looking for the same thing. So at this point in time, there is no plan in place, there is no plan afoot, but it is a discussion that we hope to resume at some point. Yes. Yes, thank you very much. Any other questions? No other questions? Thank you very much.
It is always a pleasure, colleagues, to hear from Mr. Delahaye. Mr. Delahaye, it would really have been good to have had you here in person. And not while you're coughing, certainly, but it's always good having you here. I would also like to, it was remiss of me earlier not to have made mention of our stenographer, and I must say that she is in fact by no means last or least. Miss Joyce James, again, we must thank you for your kind and continued support. At this particular time, I would like to invite the chair of the credit committee to deliver the committee's report.
Good afternoon, members. Mr. Chairman, all protocols observed. Before I start, I'd just like to ask a moment of silence for those members, those good supporters of the credit union who we lost earlier this year. I know the president would have mentioned a couple persons, but I did not hear two names that I can speak to definitely. Who? This year? Oh, your last year, but for this year, I know that we lost two very strong supporters of the credit union, and I can speak definitively to them making the credit union their place for loans. So just a moment of silence for those persons who would have lost earlier this year. Thank you. All right, the credit committee report for year 2020 in review. The credit union membership accessed over $1 billion in loan funding to finance various needs and desires. Improved loan offerings such as a $3 million unsecured loan line, reduced interest rates, improved motor vehicle loan terms were introduced. As usual, members requested funds for a variety of purposes, chief among them were for domestic and personal use. The motor vehicle loan program was also heavily utilized. We had an increased request for real estate loans and home improvement, and consistently the educational loan program was availed. The credit union total loan growth over the period remained relatively stable and flat, and we can chalk this up to a lot of persons being apprehensive, so there wasn't any huge growth over the period. The functions of the credit committee was administered by the IECCU staff members, notably Dion, Roxanne, Mark, and the frontline team. Our credit committee comprised of Audrey Wilson, Newton Nelson, Courtney Golding, Odian Campbell, and myself. We appreciate your support of this organization, and we remain committed to serving you, our membership. We thank you for continuing to choose IECCU. At this time, we'll pause and ask if there's any questions for the committee. All right, if there's no questions, I would like to all right. So I'd like to move a motion that we adopt the credit report as presented. Oh, there's a question. Mr. Codner, you're recognized. All right, so what we suggest, probably Mr. Codner can write that question and forward it, and we will respond. All right, so the motion is on the table to adopt the credit committee's report. Peter? Thank you. Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to invite the chairperson of the nomination committee to give the report of that committee.
Good afternoon again, everyone. Okay, this is the report of the nominations committee, nominating committee. The nominating committee is responsible for proposing persons to serve according to the rules, considering the requisite talents required by the credit union, term limit, fit and proper requirements, standing as a member, and the spectrum of membership. So we have, the nominees are as follows: board nominations. We have Mark Wallen, Lisa Robinson, Barrington Lawrence, Rajon Campbell. They have all retired and they have been duly nominated for another 2-year term. New nominations: Andre McFarlane, and if those persons are here, can you indicate? Okay, here we have Mr. McFarlane. And Aldane Milton, is he here? Okay. Is he online? Okay, so we have those two persons being new, and they are duly nominated. Mr. McFarlane will be nominated for 2 years, or has been nominated to serve for 2 years. Aldane Milton for 1 year. And just to introduce these two persons, Aldane Milton is currently an AVP, Application Services, Shared Services IT at Sagicor, and leads a team of developers in Jamaica and Barbados, with oversight of other development teams in the United States and India. He has over 15 years of experience in software engineering and general IT, with 8 of those years at the middle and senior management levels. Aldane holds a BSc in Computer Science from the University of the West Indies, Mona, and is currently pursuing his Master's in Computer Science, Software Engineering focus, with doctoral studies to immediately follow. Now to Mr. McFarlane, Andre McFarlane. He occupies the position of the Director, Information Technology at the Statistical Institute of Jamaica, responsible for ensuring that the division maintains its core objectives. Proficient at designing and implementing projects, processes, and communicating business information to internal and external authorities to improve business efficiency. He has extensive experience in the finance and insurance industry with in-depth knowledge of information system security and project management experience for the last 20 years. Okay, we move now to the nominations, or those who are being nominated for the Credit Committee. We have Odeon Campbell and Audrey Wilson. They are retiring and they have been duly nominated for another 2-year term. For the Supervisory Committee nominations, we have Peter Samuels, Napier McCleary, Damian White, and Dwight Moore have all retired and they are duly nominated for another term, 1-year term. We have, in addition, Stephen Levy, new, and he's duly nominated for a 1-year term. And introducing Mr. Levy, he's well known at the ICCU, having served as a volunteer field representative and with the marketing department in selecting scholarship winners. Mr. Levy is employed at the Sagicor Insurance or Sagicor Life in shared services, supporting all divisions within the group. All right, and so I've now come to the end of my nominating committee report, and we'll now ask our league representative to come and conduct the elections. Thank you so much.
Afternoon. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The persons who are retiring and the persons who new that are coming, I'll repeat the names for you. It's one of the benefits of being tall, the mic 10, so we'll also have to adjust it. So, we know the process. We'll go through the Board of Directors first, then we'll move to the Credit Committee, and the Supervisory Committee will be last. Starting with the Board, the persons who are up for elections this year is Mark Wallen, sorry, my apologies, Lisa Robinson, Barrington Lawrence. Is it a female, Rejean? Male or female? Miss Rejean Campbell, Andre McFarlane, Aldine Milton. Now we will open up to nominations from the floor, and then usually we go to 1, 2, 3. So are there any nominations from the floor? That includes online too as well. Going once, going twice, Going three times. There's no nominations from the floor, and I see no nominations online. Am I correct? Therefore, we can do it by simple majority. All who in favor of the board being presented, as the nominations as being presented, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any against? Any abstention? That goes for online as well. I can't see from here, can direct me? One abstention? Well, the ayes have it. So the board has now been selected. Mr. Mark Allen, Lisa Robinson, Wallen, Barrington Lawrence, Ms. Jean Campbell, Mr. McFarlane, and Mr. Milton. All except for Milton. Milton, the rest will be serving for 2 years. Mr. Milton, you're up again next year. So congratulate your new board. We'll move on to the Credit Committee. O'Dane Campbell and Audrey Wilson. Are there any nominations from the floor and online as well? Going once, going twice, going 3 times. No nominations face to face, any online? I'm assuming that's a no. So therefore we can do the same. Simple majority, all in favor? Any against? No abstention online? Therefore, the persons who have been duly elected to serve is O'Dane Campbell and Miss or Mrs. Audrey Wilson. Congratulations, Mrs. Congratulations. And you'll be both serving for 2 years. And then we move to Supervisor Committee. The persons being duly nominated are Peter Samuels, Napier McCleary, Damian White, Dwight Moore, Stephen Levy. All nominated for 1 year. As tradition, we open it up. Nominations from the floor. Are there any nominations from the floor? Going once. Going twice. Going 3 times. Any online? Therefore, by a simple majority, we can do it. All in favor? Any against? When you can say lively doing it, remember that videotape in this, you know? Any against? Any abstention? So online, no. Therefore, Peter Samuels, Napier McCleary, Damian White, Dwight Moore, Stephen Levy, you have been all duly elected to serve. One abstention online. To serve for 1 year. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the board of directors will meet to select a delegate to represent you at other committees as well. The board, and this really goes for everybody, have 10 days in which to meet to select a treasurer, president, secretary, or any other gazetted post that you do have. Any questions, ladies and gentlemen? All right, my job is now finished. I turn over back to the chairman.
Yes, thank you very much. The Delegates Report, and the Delegates Report is really a one-page report. The League Annual General Meeting was held in October of last year, October 2020. It was delayed because of the pandemic. And rather than having the traditional convention and then general meeting, there was a hybrid meeting conducted in similar fashion as this one, in recognition of the government restrictions at the time. 53 delegates from 25 credit unions attended in person, and 150 delegates through the Zoom platform. Delegates agreed to the distribution of the surplus, the league surplus of $9.09 million. There were no rule changes. There were 5 congratulatory resolutions. Like completely different type of meeting compared to that which we're accustomed to, but it was held nonetheless. And really that was that. So that's what took place at the general meeting in 2020. Any questions? Any questions? Thank you very much. At this time, we will ask our treasurer to move the resolution to set the maximum liability and also the distribution of surplus.
So the proposal for the appropriation of surplus for the year ending December 31, 2020, your board proposes the appropriation of surplus as follows. The surplus was $1,267,970, less the reserve fund of 20%, $253,594, with the undistributed surplus being $1,014,376, which we're proposing to retain. We also have the proposal for the setting of the maximum liability for the year ending December 31, 2021. The Board of Directors proposes that the maximum liability for 2021 be set at $2 billion. This will satisfy the maximum projected growth in interest-bearing liabilities during 2021 in relation to Article 19, Rule 69. Right. So on the proposal for the appropriation of surplus, for us to retain the undistributed surplus rather than distribute, all in favor? Okay. Oh, we have to move the motion first. Apologies. So we move the motion for accepting. So moved. Okay. Okay. So all in favor?
Aye.
All right. All against? Anybody online? All right. So move a motion for the proposal for the setting of the maximum liability. Who will move the motion for that? All in favor?
Aye.
Any against? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, if there are no further comments or questions, we have come to the end of today's proceedings. I would like to thank a lot of persons who made this possible. I would like to thank the dedicated and hardworking staff of the IECCU. I would also like to thank all the volunteers and committee members of the credit union. I'd also like to thank our technical team, all the persons who provided technical support. I'd also like to thank everybody who was able to be here in person and to join us virtually. And I wish you all my apologies. I'm sorry, I'm hearing my regulator. No, he said approved. That's what I was asking. So you're saying we need to move? Right. No, there's no proposal to change the audit. Okay. Again, colleagues, I must thank the League. I must also thank the Department of Co-operative. And again, our regulators are keeping us on our toes. Again, colleagues, I want to thank everybody in attendance for your continued confidence and support in the credit union. And I wish you all continued success. Stay safe. And again, thank you very much and have a good afternoon. Before you leave, colleagues, I would like to invite your attention to my left. And there is, in fact, packages there for everybody. So please stop by and collect your package on the way out. Again, thank you very much and have a good evening. Yes, sir. It's always good to see you. Yes.